welcome back to my channel. This is an unboxing product review and I am today doing the Watercolor Confections watercolor set in Tropicals from Prima Marketing Inc. This is a set that Lindsay the Frugal Crafter reviewed a little while ago and I was a bit curious about it. When she got it for some price, like I think it was about $25, something like that, maybe $20. And what she said was a real bargain about it was actually the palette that they're in is one of the little metal palettes, which are really expensive. And it was actually, if the paints were shit, it's a cheap way to get some empty half pans when you toss the paints and a really good metal palette. But actually she was really surprised and really enjoyed the paints. So I thought I'd give them a go as well because they're not a brand I would ever normally have gone anywhere near. They have 5 sets in the Watercolor Confections series of watercolor half pan sets with 12 half pans in each one. And these sets are Tropicals, Classics, Decadent Pies, Pastel, and Shimmering Lights. And I think the Pastel one used to be called Pastel Dreams, but at some point they've rebranded it. I can only find in the UK at the moment Tropicals, Classics and Decadent Pies, and I think that is because they've kind of launched those recently, so they're kind of, sorry, there's a hair on my camera, right, there we go. They've relaunched or launched them recently, so these are available. Now, a word on pricing, I don't know what these are in the USA right now, but if you go below in the description, there are Amazon affiliate links for UK and USA if you want to buy these yourself. Now, this in the UK, bearing in mind this is an import product for the UK from the USA, and that usually means they're pretty expensive. Just to give you a guide, things like Tim Holtz Distress Inks, when, like the white one, the picket fence, when that was launched in the US, we didn't get it in the UK for nearly 6 months. So in the meantime, it was, I don't know, normally they're like £5 or less. £2 or £3 normally. They were £30 during that period and people wanted them. Now this is a product really aimed at the scrapbooking market. Prima Marketing Inc. really sells scrapbooking products or mixed media products, so I'm not expecting these to be a really fine grade, fine art set of watercolours. They're really designed for adult colouring books, adding colour to scrapbooks, and for mixed media home decor projects, I guess. And they don't seem like what I would call artist quality paints, but I'll tell you more about what they say about themselves in a moment. As an import product in the UK, these had a list price of £48.50, which is not dissimilar from the US list prices a while ago, if I remember. I got these for £14.80, which today equates to $19.30, so 19.30, if that wasn't clear. So really pretty cheap. So for under $20 or under £15, I got the metal palette, and I looked and I found equivalent metal palettes on various art supply websites in the UK, and they were £25. So if nothing else, I got a cheap palette, right? Same as Lindsay said. So whatever, these are going to be good in that sense. So they came in this little box. They're made in Korea, South Korea. And they've got a little description on the back which reads that these are artist grade, high quality and highly pigmented watercolour pans. They are sized perfectly for artists on the go. Professional grade paints provide bright, intense, smooth and long lasting colours that will work beautifully for any art or mixed media project. So that's how they're describing them themselves, as being professional grade. I'm not saying that they're not, I'm just saying that's that's their language. So the actual palette is one of these little tin ones with the springy little clip on the back for your thumb, if that's how you like to paint. And it's got a sticky label on here with Tropicals on it that you could remove if you wanted to. And inside they have a little fold out, and they're nice because that is actually facing downwards. Sometimes these end up kind of up here. So you've got 4 little mixing areas here and 2 big areas here for washes. They have helpfully but not helpfully included a swatch card that you can paint onto, but it's not watercolor paper really, it's some kind of shiny stuff, so it's going to be hard to get decent swatches on that. And I note that these paints are numbered like 13, 14, 15. They don't have names. So across the sets, like the classic set is clearly 1 to 12, Decadent Pies is 25 onwards, and so on. You've got the little power pans there, which I'll come back to in a moment. And what's also nice is this middle section, quite normally with these palettes, lifts out, and you've got yourself 4 more mixing areas there. And then you can pop this on your knee, or you can pop this, you know, wherever you like. You could prop it on the edge there, or if you're not using large washes today in the field, you could pop it there. And that's a nice bit of versatility, and I quite like that. Something I wanted to check, because I was curious about it, was would a Winsor & Newton half pan fit in this gap in the middle? And the answer is yes, they do. They're a little wobbly. I think I might need to pop a little bit of magnetic tape on the back, but I could probably get another 6 in there and make this into a set of 18, which would be really cool. And I'm pretty certain I can swap one of their half pans for one of these. Yeah. A little bit slidey, but I think that would fit actually pretty well if I squashed the springs in. So yes, I can put a half pan in from another manufacturer. I have to say, that's really, really, really cute, isn't it? Lindsay had the same thing actually in one of her Cotman videos the other day, that she just didn't want to take the wrappings off because it's so fucking cute. Excuse my language, ladies and gentlemen. But I think they are really, really, really cute. So let's open one of them. We're going to open this sort of teal, or as Jennifer Maguire would say, a pool colour. I've never heard anyone refer to that kind of blue as pool blue before. It must be an Americanism, because you guys have swimming pools and we don't have swimming pools in our houses in the UK. So I would call this teal. It's number 13 as far as they're concerned, because I can hear these paints screaming, "I'm not a number!" Cultural reference to those of us that are 40 nearly and over there. Removing the half pan. Okay, these are interesting in that I can't tell, but I think these are poured. Really hard to tell. I'm going to have to open a few more before I can really definitively tell, but they seem so kind of well fitting. There's no like gap like you would normally get. So I think these may have been poured rather than extruded. If I just show you a Winsor & Newton professional New Gamboge here, you can kind of see just there, it sticks out and it's a little block that's been cut and put into the half pan. And I mean, this one won't come out because it's been wetted and now it's stuck. But you can normally get these out because they're just a block sitting in there. I think this one is actually a poured paint, so they've poured it in layers. Now that usually means you've got less pigment than you would get in an extruded one, because of the way they're manufactured. These have more pigment in them than these do. So we'll see. So that teal is kind of a dark, murky blue there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swatch them all out, and I'm not really going to paint anything with them kind of like live. I might do that separately. So there's a kind of a cream, there's a lavender, what looks like a green gold, pink, something that looks like phthalocyanine green yellow shade. Yeah, these have got pretty interesting textures actually. Kind of looks like it's been dried in there in some kind of intense way. I can't really tell. Yeah, you've also got a couple more pinks. There's a kind of more of a cerise and more of a cooler pink. There's a what looks like possibly a dioxazine violet. There's a really nice warm yellow, a blue, and a brown. So I think that's a pretty good collection. One glitch is that these don't have the colour numbers on the half pans, so I'm going to have to write them on. Oh, this one's come out, so we can find out. Actually, no, stand corrected. That is an extruded block. That is not a poured. I take back what I said. These are not poured. These are extruded, so these will have high amounts of pigment. I am going to have to write on these because I'm going to mix them up otherwise, and I want to keep the numbers right. So I'm going to pause now, write the numbers on, swatch them out, and come back. Okay, I'm back. I've just taken them out and popped the reference numbers along them so I can see them. There's a little bit of space in here, so I think if I was using... I've just checked them against Winsor & Newton half pans. These are a little bit bigger than Winsor & Newton. They're kind of the size of Schminke Höredam. pans, half pans, so I could probably get another one in each end if I was using Winsor and Newton, and then a row in the middle, so I could probably get 21 in this little set, which is exactly the size I want for on plein air work. I actually want a 21 set, so I'm really pleased that if nothing else, for £14.80, I've got enough half pans and a little palette that I can prize these out with a palette knife, chuck them away, and I'm happy. So regardless of how these swatch, I'm a happy customer because I kind of got what I was really after. So what I'm now going to do is swatch those out onto here with my water brush, which is a Pentel Aquash Waterbrush, and it's the medium size nib, I think. Let's pop it there. It's really heavily stained with crap because I use it with staining paints, so where is it? Are we going to focus? No, we don't want to focus today. Come on, autofocus for me. Oh, anyway, guys, you get the idea. It's a water brush. We've seen them before. I like these Pentel ones because they're kind of flattened in the middle. They hold really well. This one is stained, but it doesn't like re-release. Occasionally, I soak it in alcohol to get off anything loose, but it's nylon. It doesn't release the colour too much. I say that, and it's released a bit on my hand. So this one does need a little bit of working just to kind of clean it off before I do my swatches. But I love these, and I'll be linking these in the product description below as well. Thank you. Okay, I have done my little swatch card now, and I want to just give you some initial observations while these are drying down. Some of the colours are very pretty. Now, like I said at the beginning, I was not expecting artist quality brilliance here. They are very opaque, which is pretty typical for paints made in Korea. Remember, the Korean market and the Japanese market are for watercolours for use on rice paper. They are not watercolours in the way that we tend to use them in the UK, in Europe, in Australia, and in the USA for what I would call like our mainstream Western watercolour painting. So they tend to be a little bit more creamy or gel-like. They tend to be a bit more opaque because they need to be. So what I suspect has happened here, and I'm speculating, and if anyone from Prima Marketing is watching this and wants to correct me, drop me an email at my business contact email address. I suspect what these are is a Korean watercolour range that Primo sort of have packaged in their own packaging. So these feel very much not like a product for scrapbooking and so on, but a Eastern watercolour, I would say. So number 13 is a kind of emerald green, very, very opaque, feels okay. Number 14 is a sort of yellow ochre. 15 is a pretty interesting neutral, non-granulating blue. It could be a neutral phthalocyanine. There are a couple that don't really have a tint in either direction, but it reminds me a little bit of, I mean, it is very slightly on the cool side of blue, I guess. Reminds me a little bit of Antwerp blue in a way, but it isn't Antwerp blue. 16 looks like green gold mixed with a filler. It's a really nice light green. I think it's probably Urgazan yellow and phthalocyanine yellow mixed together. So that's green gold and phthalo green yellow shade mixed together with a filler. 17 is some kind of orange with a filler. So it looks like a cad orange, but I'm pretty certain it's not a cad orange. I think it is probably not a pyrrole orange, but the other one, the Benz something something orange with a filler. 18 is, I'm 99% certain, phthalo green. Again, I think it has a filler in it because it seems opaque. 19, not sure. That could be a Quin Rose. There's two very similar. 19 and 22 are pretty similar. I think 19 is Quin Red and 22 is either Quin Rose or Quin Magenta. 20 is Dioxazine Violet with some kind of filler. 21 is kind of like a mimic Cad Yellow. I think it is one of the Hansa Yellows maybe with a filler. 22 I've covered. 23 I think is a more of a cool blue, I think, than 15. So I would say that's probably a phthalocyanine. And then 24, which kind of looks like a burnt umbery kind of shade, I would say is probably one of the transparent organic browns they use in things like Van Dyke brown mixed with a filler. Now, they paint really well on this weird shiny paper, which is very typical for these kind of opaque, chalky watercolours. that you get from the Eastern market, which is absolutely fine. They are what they are, and what we must not do is go, oh, well, they're rubbish because they are not going to work for our beautiful transparent washes. It's horses for courses, guys. If you've got some paints that are opaque and a bit chalky, you just use them for things where you can use opaque, a bit chalky paints. So I'm going to try them out in gouache techniques. So I'm going to try painting dark to light by using some white gouache to go in between the layers, see how that goes. Have a look at Lindsay the Frugal Crafter's review of the same set, which I'll put up above, and I'll also link to the videos she's done where she uses them, because she does some really interesting paintings with them that kind of work with the paint, which is what you always have to do. You always have to work with your paints and with the supplies you have and not keep buying new stuff. And see how they go. From my point of view, my only concern about them, because they kind of describe themselves as professional and artist grade, there's no Lightfastness information, but I can tell you some Lightfastness information for free, ladies and gentlemen. If there is a lot of lithopone filler in your paints, which I suspect is the case here, and it is the case with many student lines, which is why you will see a pigment used. So let's have an imaginary pigment like PV999. Let's imagine that that's used in the professional grade from Winsor & Newton and the cotton grade from Winsor & Newton, and the difference is that the latter has got lithopone fillers. The former might have a Lightfastness rating of really, really good, and the latter might have a Lightfastness rating of kind of meh. And the reason is that the lithopone itself is excited by light, and that causes it to actually then damage the pigment. That's not the kind of be-all and end-all version, everybody. That's the kind of abbreviated version, so don't start writing in saying I got that wrong. But lithopone presence thereof does impact Lightfastness, so I would not expect these to be that Lightfastness. Now, someone somewhere has probably done a trial. I don't agree with a lot of the Lightfastness trials that are being done online, because they kind of put them in blazing sun for 12 hours a day. And I'm going to be really honest with you here. If you buy a watercolor painting and you hang it outside with no frame, and you hang it in direct sunlight for 12 hours a day, you're an idiot. That is not what you do with a watercolor painting that you've just spent money on. You do not hang watercolors in bright light. It is pretty well known that you don't do that. Fine art does not like bright light. Now, it doesn't mean hang it in the dark, but I do mean you might want to put it on the wall next to the window so that it's not got really bright light shining directly on it for 12 hours a day. And you'd normally put it in a frame, and the glass absorbs some of the ultraviolet light. Not all of it, but some of it. The window will also absorb some of it, so the actual amount falling on the face of the painting is really not that high. So when people say they've had a colour chart on the wall in their studio and it's faded, remember it's naked. It should have a layer of glass in front of it, and it should probably not be in direct light. And we have a tendency to like to paint like I do. My table here has a window there shining direct light on it for part of the day. So always keep that in mind when you look at a Lightfastness trial that someone's done. Is it realistic Lightfastness? Is that how this painting is really going to look? And also remember, your painting hasn't got to last hundreds of years, because the person who bought it is going to probably last at most 70 years. And I'm not being morbid here, but most of us, our artwork is not kind of Leonardo da Vinci or Van Gogh. It is the kind of thing that is going to go, people will buy it, they'll put it on the wall of their new home, and they may get rid of it 20 or 30 years later. They are not going to bequeath it down the generations for the vast majority of us as artists. So keep that in mind and kind of be sensible about Lightfastness, because I hear a lot of panic about it, really, of oh no, I can't use that because it's like ranked one down from the top. I paint with genuine rose madder, which is one of the most unlightfast things ever, but I've got paintings with it hanging up that are absolutely fine because I didn't mix it with anything, and mixing it with things can impact its Lightfastness, and I just haven't hung it in a bright place. And sure, it loses a bit of its edge, but still looks fine to me. Anyway, that's my little rant over. Lindsay had a rant about Cotman haters the other day. I'm having a rant about Lightfastness. So, they are what they are. They're reasonable quality, kind of opaque. They work well on this shiny paper, which is probably because they're intended for shiny rice or mulberry paper. So I'm going to have a go at painting with them. I won't be doing that till the weekend now. Well, you're not going to know that because it's all going to be cut into one video. So it'll be a couple of days in time before I paint it. So the environs may look a little bit different, but no tidier. I have also got the Decadent Pies set, which is the kind of earth colours and the sort of brighter reds. That's the one that Lindsay thought was really nice for painting outdoors with, and actually that's the one I wanted to try out personally. So I bought that, and then I saw that I could get this one from a different vendor for the same discounted price of £14.80. I thought, sod it, I'll buy both of them, and this one arrived first. So worst case scenario is I've got two 21 half pan palettes to use with my Winsor & Newton paints. Best case scenario is I've found some paints that are useful for sketching outdoors that I probably would never use on a finished painting, but that's not what these are for. These are sketching paints as far as I'm concerned. Even if I was paying £50 or £48 or whatever it is, for 12 half pans, you have to kind of keep in mind, and that's assuming the palette costs nothing, of course. That's 12 half pans for like £4 each. Take the price of the palette off, you're buying 12 half pans for £3 each. They're going to be student quality at that price. There is no, and this is also a really important point, there is no kind of legal requisite for what is professional grade and what is student grade. I could manufacture I could buy Cotman paints, put them in new tubes and sell them as professional grade. Now, apart from the fact that the reselling bit is illegal, no one could do anything about the fact that I was selling them as professional grade fine art paints, because there is nothing that says I can't do that. So you always have to be a bit careful, and I have to say that what I have noticed in particularly paints from the Eastern market, even though this is an American company, Prima is a company in California, in Chino, but they may only be like a trading office for actually like a company in Korea, I don't know. But what I do know with particularly Korean paints is they're advertised as artist quality, and what they mean is they're not child quality. So it doesn't mean that they're like above student quality, it just means they're not for children. And these do indeed say on the back that they're not suited to anyone under the age of 14 years of age. There's no toxicity data mentioned at all, and I've checked their website and I can't find any either. So if there's anyone from Prima Marketing Inc. who wants to get in touch with me and tell me about the toxicity of their paints, I will gladly do another video. So I'm going to do some painting with them, and I'll obviously show you that. And then when I get the Decadent Pies, there will be another video in my product reviews series, which will be called like Prima Watercolours Part 2. It'll have a, it's not going to be like the next, it won't be like, I don't know, whatever we're on now, product reviews 15. It won't be like number 16, it might be number 20, but it will have Prima Watercolours Part 2 Decadent Pies set, so you can find it. And I will try and add an iCard to this video about here, so that you can find it really easily. And if you're interested in these paints, I have got affiliate scheme links down below for Amazon UK and USA and dickblick.com, which are pretty much the cheaper suppliers. And I'm trying to get Michaels and Joann's as well, to be able to offer those of you in the US and Canada a bit more of a wider range of who you can buy from. But those links will be there, and I'll also include like all the other supplies I've used, particularly for the painting that I'm about to do. Thank you all very much, and good evening, even though I'm about to carry on with painting. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have done some work with these Prima watercolours now. Sorry, I nearly fell off my chair then. And I want to show you what I've done. I want to talk a bit about the paints as well. Now, this picture here is not done with them. That's done with, this is the beginnings of a picture. This is the larval form of a picture, done with Winsor & Newton paints. I've just got the one I've just done over there, kind of drying off a little bit because it's really wet. I used the whole tin because I wanted to try all the mixing areas, and one thing I found, I don't know why, is that these ones here, the paint beaded up on a lot more than the rest of it, so I think maybe there's something on there that needed washing off before I used them. But I found that these mixing tins for mixing are brilliant. They don't leak, they don't tip on me, and if you put the paints flat, and when you're getting the paints off of here, you kind of concentrate going this way. They don't slide too much in that direction. And of course, there is space to add another paint into each of these spring clips. And of course, I also know, and Lindsay the Frugal Crafter talked about this herself, but and she got it from someone else. If you take all the paints out and squash this outside tab inwards, when you put the half pan back in, it will hold it really snug and tight, so you can get them to fit better. So I haven't used all the colours, that's the first thing. I wanted to paint the seascape because I figured these colours would lend themselves pretty well to it. I used both the blues mixed together, actually. I used this kind of rose, I used this kind of almost lime green or kind of green goldy kind of colour, this Dalon green number 18 there, and I used this purple number 20. Didn't use anything else, didn't use this yellow ochre, which is actually really cute when dry. I don't know if you can see that, it's got a really kind of almost fibrous quality. Quite liked it. I didn't use the phthalo green yellow shade, I stuck to the blue shade because that's what I wanted. Oh, and I used the orange, I used some of that orange as well. So actually quite a lot of colours for one painting. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colours in one painting, which is a lot, but you know, it's a review, that's the point of it. So, things I found out. Something I want to show you first of all is how these paints actually interact with wet paper, because that was a bit surprising. So this is an Aquafine or Georgian watercolour if you're in the USA. Postcard, it's £140 cold press paper, I think it's 6" by 4", and they have all the postcard stuff on the back, but I buy these cheap and I use them for swatching. And what I also do, a little tip for people there, if I paint like a big painting or a painting for a friend or something to sell, what I do is I make one of these up with all my swatches of the kind of the raw colours and then of any mixes as well, and I make note and I file these in an index file system so that if I think, oh, I really want to do something like that painting I did for so-and-so, or if I give someone a gift for Christmas of, you know, a painting of a seascape, and the next year I want to paint them another one, and obviously I'd kind of like them to look similar so they can hang them near each other, I will get the card out and I'll know what I've done. So that's how I kind of keep track. So what I did with this painting that I've just done, which was actually kind of a mini version or an impressionist version of this more literal seascape that I'm working on. Please excuse these awful clouds. I tried a new technique and I didn't like it. So what I did in this painting I've just done, that is drying over by the heater, was I wet the paper, and it was a cotton paper I was using. It was a Winsor & Newton 100% cotton paper. So what you can do with cotton paper or very good well-sized paper is you can let that water kind of sink in a little, and then you apply your wet paint onto the top of it and it will spread very slowly and give you a nice effect. Now I've mixed up a colour here and I'll tell you how I made that in a moment. Because this is Aquafine paper, I've got to do it while it's a little wetter. But can you see it exploded almost instantly in a really uncontrollable way? And you know, it's nice, but that's a bit fast moving for my personal way of painting. I like it when I do that technique for paint to move pretty slowly. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, if I paint a whole area, I'm using dirty water because it makes it easier for you to see where I've put the paint. And I would normally like spot in paint along the top if I was making a shadow or something, and I would want it to slowly spread, but this rockets around. That to me indicates a couple of things. One is a large amount of lithopone, which is the filler they use in cheap paint, and a large amount of probably a synthetic oxcore or a synthetic detergent in there, a wetting agent designed to help that very chalky paint, because it's got a lot of lithopone in it, to wet and to flow. What we often find with cheap paints, and even Cotman does this to an extent, is that if you do a wash and add wet paint to wet paper, it doesn't flow in the way that it kind of should flow. And I think actually what I'll do is I'll show you how like a kind of grown-up paint behaves, if you like, to show you the difference. I've got a little bit of Quinrose Cad Orange mix left over from a painting the other day, and I just spot that in. Now that has jumped quite a lot, but then look, it slows right down. So you get a little explosion, and then it creeps slowly. Now, the wetness of the paper that I was using was similar to how wet this area now is. So I would paint it in at the top, and it would slowly bleed downwards, very slowly, rather than that kind of explosion. So I was a little surprised by that. The reason it's done is because those lithopone filler paints don't wet very well. So if you did that with Cotman, what I just did, you might find actually the paint literally just stays there. It doesn't move outwards. So that's why manufacturers of cheaper paints, and I have found actually Korean and Japanese paints, which are usually very opaque, they're designed for rice paper, do have a tendency to do that. I don't know whether that's something to do with getting a nice even paint on rice paper. Don't know. So some of the mixes that I used that I thought were nice, I'll just explain some of them. I got a really nice shadow from the Phthalo Green 18 and what looks like a Quin Rose 22. They make a lovely neutral grey. I really enjoyed that. I used the two blues mixed together because that took this reddish blue and this neutral blue and gave me a kind of a slightly more opaque, lovely blue to work with. And I warmed that with a little bit of the rose and then a tiny speck of the orange just to grey it down just a tiny bit. Remember that we always use burnt sienna with ultramarine to make a brown or a neutral grey. And remember that burnt sienna is a brown and that all browns are actually just desaturated oranges. So all the rules that apply with a reddish brown also apply with an orange. So I used those. The mixes that I liked the most actually though were this number 16, this kind of lime green, almost green gold but not quite colour. I used that on its own. I used it mixed with that shadow colour that I've made, and that kind of knocked it down a tiny bit. But the best knockdown that I found that I really liked was to take this and add a tiny bit of the rose to it. And you can't really see it because I haven't got much left, but I got that kind of yellow ochre, which was really cute, and I did use that. So that was really nice. That was the neutral I made from the green and the rose. That kind of neutralised purpley colour was the two blues mixed with the rose with a drop of orange. And then I used the orange and the pink, the orange and the rose together. I used this lovely purple I made. This was the two blues mixed together with the rose to make that lovely purple. I did use the purple from the set, but I used it to kind of glaze a little bit. Now the painting that I've done, which I'll show you now, I think it's as dry as it's going to get for now. Paper has warped a bit. What I painted it on, first of all, was Winsor & Newton 100% cotton paper that I made a block out of, and I'll pop a link upstairs in the iCards to when I made the block so you can see what paper I used. And this block making method, I must stress, is Lindsay the Frugal Crafter's block making method. I have a video on it as well, but the reason I have a video on it is it's me trying her method out to see how easy it is. I'm not kind of claiming it as my own, and I state very clearly in that video that it's not me copying her. So it's a 100% cotton paper. It's really absorbent, and you can see it's bowed even though it's a block. So this was kind of hard to paint on with this type of paint. So what I did to get this seascape, have I got my light on? Yes, I do. First of all, I wet the sky in a couple of places and I dropped in colour along the top edge, that kind of two blues mixed together with a little bit of the rose, and I expected it to kind of slowly creep down, but it didn't. It exploded out, filled the whole area with this kind of pale purple. I then filled in the rest of the sky with the two blues mixed together, but mostly the lighter of the two blues, and I didn't get a good sky at all. I really don't like the texture of it. It's kind of patchy. It was really hard to paint. The sea then, which looks terrible on the camera but actually looks a bit better in real life. Let me try and get it in position. I did alternating stripes of the two different blues and the purple, and then I glazed over the top with a mixture of the two blues mixed together with a bit of the shadow tone, and then I dropped in very thin lines of the rose so that I would get this kind of variegated, wavy kind of sea. What I noticed is that in areas like here, the paint has actually crept and chunked up around the edge and left patches, so same as the sky, it went patchy. This strip of land here, I painted over in just that green gold lime kind of colour, and then I held it vertical so that it ran down here, and that's my reflection, so that was intentional. Painted over it with phthalo green, and spotted in at this end just dots of the rose, and then over time, and it's still wet there, over time as it's kind of started to dry, they've mingled and made this kind of brownish green. But the idea of it, if I can get it far enough away that we can really see it, was that this was a maybe very late night, maybe very early morning, very dark sea, very, very little to see. I wanted that landmass to be muddier, but that phthalo is so persistent that even with a lot of rose added, I couldn't get a dark green. It kind of went from bright green to shadow, and that was pretty hard. It did work for doing reflections. It did run downwards when I wanted it to, but that kind of patching that I got, where the paint kind of clumps together, like not as in sediments, but as in, I don't know why it does it, but it kind of just draws away from certain areas and leaves white patches. I've seen other really cheap paints do that. I couldn't honestly tell you why this one did it. This actual kind of sketch is a common sketch I do to warm myself up. It's actually based on the view from my apartment, where I have a little island that I look out over on the sea. So it's a painting I paint quite often, and I paint it in the same way with the same kinds of colours, often with different paint. This is the first time I found it so hard to get it to kind of look how I wanted it to look. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed with that. I mean, that cloud's kind of come out okay in the end because I added some more colour. But when I added it along the top expecting the whole area to bleed this kind of dark colour, and it didn't. I got this almost pale grey, so I had to add more colour. But the shape of it's kind of nice. That cloud just didn't work. It just went too dark. And the sea where I put the colours, especially here, they haven't mixed and mingled at all. They've just sat, which is common when you've got a lot of lithophone filler. So let's be honest here. These paints are actually really intended for use in Prima Marketing's own colouring books and for scrapbooking techniques. They're not designed as fine art watercolours. I think we've established that. I'm going to echo something that Lindsay the Frugal Crafter said in her review, and I've actually now, since I filmed the first part of this video a couple of days ago, I've now also looked at some other videos by Christina Werner, Star of May, and I'll link to her in the iCards now, and also Tio from Parker Blogs. If you don't know him, he's Malaysian and he's fantastic, a really, really great urban sketch artist. And some of the work he does is so beautifully simple. There's an absolute elegance in the simplicity of his style, and I really, really enjoy that. And his product reviews. He does a lot of book reviews, but when he does his painting product reviews, they're very thorough. Like myself, he does fair side-by-side comparisons, and I really like the way he kind of operates. So Tio, Christina, and Lindsay all said the same thing. If you can get these sets on a deal where you're paying less than about £15 to £20 sterling in the UK, or less than about $25 US, the tin actually would cost you more than that normally. So you're getting a cheap tin and you're getting 12 colours that you might want to keep. You might want to just use them for adult colouring books, where you won't want to mix the colours really. You might want to just use them in Prima Marketing's own product colouring books. You might want to give them to a friend. You might want to use them for scrapbooking. You might want to give them to a child. I mean, they do say they're not suited to under 14s, but I think a teenager who just wants to add some colour to something without really getting too bogged down in mixing on the paper, like wet and wet mixing, will be fine, because they mix really nicely, and I got some really nice mixes from them. So their mixability is really good, and I can't fault them on the lovely colours I got. Where they go wrong is wet and wet painting does not work. They either move too fast or too slow, or they clump, or they leave patches. And if I show you that swatch I did earlier of the very high quality paint, that's still slowly moving. But the cheap paint has just filled the whole area and then created backruns on its own. So I don't like it for that. But I would echo Christina, Tio, Lindsay, get it for the palette, put some paints in it you like and use it for en plein air painting. Keep the paints, they're not bad paints, and use them for things where you don't need to do wet and wet mixing. I mean, these would be fine if I was just painting for example, urban sketch paintings where I'm not going to want to do wet and wet mixing, where what I'm primarily doing is painting very, very, very dilute washes over a pen and ink, so a line and wash drawing. So I would do a pen and ink drawing, and I would use something like, if I can find it, something like this. Pigma Micron pen. These are kind of waterproof pens used by a lot of urban sketchers. I would use that, and then I would paint very, very dilute washes over. And if you want to see what that technique's like, obviously I've linked to Tio already, but I will also link to Peter Sheila, I think his name is off the top of my head, who is another fantastic. I think he might be Canadian, I'm not sure. Peter, if you're out there, please correct me. He does some beautiful work as well, which I've mimicked in a review I did, which I'll also link to on tinted Bockingford papers. I use line and wash as my review. So if you're interested in that style and how you could use these paints in that style, check out Tio's channel and Peter's channel, because these paints would work for that. They're a little opaque, so you would need to dilute them a lot, but actually, you know, I think they'd work. But for me, I think these will be, the paints will be kept. I won't throw the paints away, but I will only be using them really for maybe line and wash, maybe a few other things, maybe for product comparisons, I guess. But no, for me, it was a cheap tin. You know, it was £14.80. And these tins empty are £25 to £30 in the UK for metal ones. So well worth it for a really nice tin with a loop on the back, loads of mixing areas, really great. Paints aren't bad paints, but they are not what they are advertised as. So these say artist grade, high quality. They're not. These are student grade, if that. They are not great quality. But I'm not going to hold that against them, because, hey, I got a really cheap tin. So I'm going to put some links below in the product descriptions. In the video description. I'll put affiliate links for Amazon UK, Amazon USA, and dickblick.com. I don't know if they're carrying them. If they are, I'll link every product I use, the paper, the brushes, everything else, the Pigma pen I showed. Everything will be linked down there, so you can find everything. And the brush I used to do that was a Dalon D77 size 12 round from Dalon and Rowney. My favourite brush at the moment. I really love this brush, and you all know I'm enamoured with. I'm sorry this video is so dark. Actually, I've just realised how really dark it is. I think it's because I moved my desk a little bit. Must sort that out. You'll know that this is one of my favourite brushes at the moment, and I use these Proline Plus brushes a lot too, but I just love that round, and I don't have a big round in Proline Plus yet, so I must get one. But Proline Plus is my absolute favourite fibre, apart from the animal fibres at the moment. So I will link, and I will also link to the type of paper that this is, and if you want to know how to make your own blocks out of it, have a look in my video, which is in the Spin Doctor Sits series, which is kind of where I just sit and chat, and I try something new while I'm doing it, and my trying something new was making blocks. So a really good way to use up, like if you've bought imperial sheets of paper, and you cut them down and you've got a lot of offcuts, make little mini blocks out of them, use them on plein air. It's a really great use for them. And Lindsay, thank you again for showing us how to do that, because I absolutely love making and using these blocks. They're fantastic. So thank you all very much. There will be a part 2 video to this at some point in the future, which will be the Decadent Pan set of the same paints, which has got some metallics in it, which will be really interesting. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you all very much, and good evening.